Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Paola, and today I have a very special author interview. My guest is an author of four books now, which is very, very exciting. A returning guest also. Please reintroduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the roommate arrangement.
Hi, I'm Samantha Markum. The roommate arrangement is my fourth YA. It takes place sort of in the first year of college. It's actually summer session. So it's about Blair. She's just graduated high school, and in a couple of weeks, she's moving to college. She's doing an advanced pre-major program that's supposed to be very intense. And 2 weeks before she's supposed to move with her two best friends and live in their dream house together, her best friends tell her they don't want to live with her. So she sort of gets dropped and has to scramble to find somewhere to live because on the other side of that is she's taking this sculpting class with her idol, and she knows that if she doesn't take it this summer, she'll never get the chance again. So she's like, if I have to move into the dorms and my parents have to pay for that, they won't pay for my sculpting classes, and then I'll never get a chance to do this. So I have to figure it out. So she answers a very desperate roommate, like random roommate ad. They're desperate. She's like, perfect. They're desperate. I'm desperate. She immediately says yes. And then when she gets there, she finds out one of four just like random sophomores she's moving in with is her brother's best friend, her very annoying brother's best friend, not even like the brother she likes. Very annoying brother.
I really love that you packed a bunch of stuff in your novel. I feel like it's the combination of like your best traits as a writer. The ensemble
Thank
cast,
you.
the friendship, the banter. Oh my goodness. I love Samantha Markum's character banter. It's so so
Thank
fun.
you.
And Blair is your second fat main character, and she's quite different
Yes.
from Win in Love
Yeah.
of the Record. So how'd you go about her character creation?
I think for me, it was more of like, when it definitely mirrors kind of more of what I was like when I was in high school. Her issues and college, like her issues with her body feel more centered in what a lot of people, definitely a lot of people my age went through, because I'm quite a bit older than Blair and Win. And so I really wanted to, I think in writing her, dive into a lot of the stuff that like the harder stuff, kind of the bigger feelings that surround, fat phobia, especially like internalized fat phobia. And then in writing Blair, I was like, I feel that we are kind of in an age where it's still very tough. Like it is obviously still very tough, but I really wanted to write someone who has a few insecurities. She definitely has moments of insecurity. She definitely worries about what other people will think of her body in certain instances, but I think has a little bit more confidence than Wynn did. She's had boyfriends, she's, had sex, like she's been naked in front of people. Like she has a little bit more experience than Wynn did, and definitely works hard to see her body in a very positive light, which Wynn does also, but definitely struggles with it a little bit more, especially with like how other people view her. Whereas with Blair, Blair has a lot of issues, and I was like, let's give this girl a break. Let's give her one thing she's not struggling as much with, because she really struggles with everything else.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the like friendship abandonment of it all. I feel like a lot of people have this internal feeling that their friends secretly hate them. And
Yes.
it's horrible. It's horrible. And Blair is sort of true when they say, like, we don't want to live with you anymore, but it's cool. It's not a big deal. And I like that in the rush of it all, she's like noticing how meeting the new people at the new house actually do get along and are excited to see her. Mikey,
Hmm.
especially, is very like, yay,
I
you're
love Mikey.
here. Um,
Yeah.
and this is another one of your really big strong suits, in my opinion, in your writing, the ensemble casts. So, can you
Thank
talk a little
you.
bit about this?
Yeah, so I think coming out of writing Love Off the Record, especially because that also takes place first year of college, I had a lot of people who were like, yeah, I went through really similar or like the exact same roommate issues that Win went through. And I was like, that's weird. The same? Like, that's weird. Because Win's is pretty specific. I was like, I didn't know that was going on for so many people. And so I was like thinking, I think a lot about what people go through going into college. And I think the biggest one is friend breakups. And especially in a three-person friend group, I've had so many people be like, that's the dreaded three-person friend group. Someone's always left out. I had friendships like that in high school and even like at the end of high school going into college. And I was like, this is something that people really deal with, I think, more than anything else, more than like romantic relationship breakups, the friend breakup and like losing contact, I think is the most prevalent and also one of the hardest. It's like the biggest growing pain. For Blair, I wanted to put her in that pressure cooker of like, these are people she's been friends with her whole life. Like, she's always felt like this is where she belongs. And all of a sudden now she's on the outside of that. And she goes through a little bit of like the denial of, yeah, we'll still be friends. We'll still like, it'll be fine. Like, this is just our living situation, doesn't have to change anything, which is what they tell her. And it's sort of, I wanted to get into like the emotional journey of also figuring out that like people don't always say what they mean. You know, a lot of friendships I think are worth saving and some really are not. And I also wanted to highlight the things that her friends gave her the hardest time about are things that did not bother people that weren't type A. Like they aren't type A like Blair. They aren't high strung. Like they don't care about keeping the place clean. I wanted to show that Blair can actually deal with that and also that people can actually deal with Blair. You know, they can still mesh well. Even if someone tells you you're too much, there's always going to be someone who's willing to deal with whatever your too muchness is because there's really no such thing as being too much.
Oh, agreed. I love that. I also want to get into, obviously, the misunderstood bad boy tropiness of it all, because I love a misunderstood bad boy. I love it
Me
so
too.
much.
Yeah.
What about the misunderstood bad boy trope that made him
Uh,
perfect for Blair?
So I really wanted to write a character who had gone through some kind of anger management therapy. I really started thinking about it when I was writing Love Off the Record because there is a part where Win and Three are going back and forth and they're talking about like feeling angry and why it's okay to be angry about stuff. Because I think that anger is one of those emotions that really has a stigma against it. I think that like we feel a lot of shame around being angry and about feeling anger. And I think that it's just like every other emotion. I think it, you know, of course, like requires regulation the way that all emotions require regulation. And I really wanted to dive into a character who is going through kind of like people thinking that there is something wrong with them because they know about his anger. So like Jamie's whole thing is like people think that he's like quote unquote like dangerous, like people from high school. That was like his rumored stereotype was that he was dangerous because, you know, he'd been in anger management. But it's like, well, yeah, he was in anger management, he was in therapy, like he's working on it. That's not anything that you have to like, that's not, it doesn't have to be scary. Like, yes, of course, anger can be explosive and scary, but it also, I think going to therapy and showing that you want to regulate that is very important. And I think that it does lead to a lot of like misunderstanding of people when they have those big emotions. And I wanted that to be the thing that Jamie and Sawyer connected on because, you know, for her parents, Sawyer's anger is a source of a lot of shame. Like they do think that he is, and Sawyer, yeah, he definitely needs to regulate it. But I think the source of his anger is what's more important. And I think that, you know, without getting into spoilers, that should be the focus is figuring out, well, what is it that makes him so angry and not just reacting to his anger. And so, you know, for them to want Sawyer to be different, to send him to therapy, to be like, we want you to get your anger under control, but then to have a stigma against Jamie for also being there and
Yeah.
that for that being where they met, I think created a really like, you know, interesting dynamic. I think it's, they hold it against Jamie and they hold it against Sawyer too in a different way. But I really wanted to get into that. That's actually the first time anyone's asked me about that too. And I forgot, I mean, not that I forgot, but like, I do really like care about in this book
Yeah.
and not something I've gotten to talk a lot about. So
Yeah, and he's a kid. Like, I
yeah.
get that when you are a kid too, it's very different. Like, I understand Blair's point of view more than I understand the parents' points of view because I'm like, you
Mm-hmm.
need to relax. He's in college. He
His
has to
brain is still cooking. They're all
Yeah.
still young. Their brains are fresh. Well, and for Sawyer and Jamie, their friendship is really based in positivity rather than negativity. You know, it's not just two angry kids feeding off of each other's anger.
Mhm.
You know, Jamie is the person who makes Sawyer feel like he doesn't need to be different, and Sawyer is the person who makes Jamie feel like he belongs somewhere. It's like their, you know, their friendship, I think, is very like deeply rooted in how positive they make each other feel rather than negative. Which was also something I really wanted to show because, you know, when in talking about brother's best friend as a trope, a lot of people are like, oh, why does the brother, I didn't know about this until I wrote it. And then somebody pointed it out and I was like, oh, well, I'm glad I don't have to worry about that because that's not how I wrote it. But, you know, a lot of people think like, oh, well, why does the brother feel that he, like his sister is his possession? Like, you know, he doesn't want
Oh,
his best friend to like be with her because she belongs to him. And I was like, oh, that's not what's happening here. So that's fine. No, Sawyer does not care about her. He cares about Jamie. He's like, keep her, she sucks. Keep her away from him.
I love that. I also love a strained sibling relationship in
Mm-hmm.
fiction. I think it's
Me
very,
too.
very interesting. So, what about Sawyer and Blair's relationship and dynamic made it so like good? Because I like you said, you don't really have to worry about about Sawyer being possessive over Blair and that sort of
Mhm.
kind of like a sexist trope of like, ooh, you need me to protect you from scary boys.
Right. Right. Well, I really wanted to write siblings that didn't get along. I think there are a lot of books where I feel like the siblings get along almost too well. There are a lot of books where I read it and I'm like, oh, I can tell you're an only child. Which like I'm an only child, but I run my siblings through all of my friends who have siblings and get them to flag me for anything that they think is unrealistic. But I definitely, just in Blair and in Sawyer in general, they had to not get along because the whole premise is Jamie has to keep the secret from his best friend. Because, Blair's like, you can't, if you tell him, he'll tattle on me because that's their dynamic is like they're constantly ratting each other out. And so she's like, you have to, keep this secret for me because if you don't, Sawyer will tell my parents and I'll get pulled out of here. And, there's a lot of complications with that, with like how she signed her lease. And I'm always going to be writing a liars. Liars are my thing. I love them. I love someone who goes into a situation and is like, I'm not going to tell the truth right now, kind of for no reason at all. So I think that, that facilitated the whole plot was Sawyer and Blair not getting along, but their relationship and the specifics of their relationship really developed as I was writing it. It wasn't, I went into it very surface level of like they don't get along. And then the more that I wrote their backstory and kind of like built them up as characters, I was like, oh, I think I'm really getting into why he's angry because, I'd always figured that that was where they met because I knew what Jamie's deal was. And I was like, well, I didn't really think that much about Sawyer, but I needed to be because I needed to know also why he was there. And I think the more that I built up their background, the more that I realized what it was that made them not get along. It's not just a clashing of personalities. There's a lot of like really, deep-seated issues between the two of them.
We talked a little bit about Blair getting, really overwhelmed and having all this stuff
Mhm.
happening around her. Something that really struck me was how it affected her getting told that she was failing, that she was, not doing a great job, and the parental expectations versus personal desire of it all. In all of that, I
Mhm.
also love that Blair has a safe haven in the gallery and her
Mhm.
classes. So, what do you have to say about giving her that safe haven in the midst of?
Yeah, she's got these two different teachers who are like two different, like they're the polar opposite of each other, basically. We'll start with the computer science. I definitely knew I wanted to write like a gifted kid kind of going through gifted kid burnout. I wanted her to go into this being someone who's always done really well in school, who's like always been, people are always wanting to be in her group, in group projects. She's always taken care of everything. She's always gotten A's. Like she's always been ahead of the curve. And to get into this advanced class and realize that she's actually in here mostly just average or behind, especially being, falling behind is like for her, that's like life or death. Like it's the worst thing that could happen. And I wanted her at the same time going into her sculpting classes where like I would say she's probably equally as prepared, maybe even less prepared going into sculpting. I wanted her to, I don't want to say struggle because I don't think that she struggles with her art. I think she struggles with letting herself make art because her whole fear is making something bad. And, on the one hand, we have her computer science teacher who, Jamie went through this same program. So he tells her, like, they don't want you to do well. The whole point is for you basically to fail. They want you to pay for this class, then they want you to pay for all your other classes. Just another way for them to make money off of you. A lot of people will drop out before the end. A lot of people won't pass. And that's like, it's designed that way. And I wanted her to go from that and her professor in that class, who doesn't care about her doing well and not someone who's willing to try to understand her or help her in any way, and seems to actively want to see her fail. To Dion, her idol, who, does this sculpting class, who is a very soft place to land, who wants her to do well, who, she's like, it's okay to not be good at this. I just want you to do it. Versus her other class where it's not okay not to be good at it. So I really wanted to show the two different sides of it and how being in her sculpting class really helps her deal with the issues she's running into in the other class. Because, to her, that type of failure is, again, end of the world because her parents have put so much pressure on her and she's put so much pressure on herself to do well. In the class where her parents don't care if she does well, she feels like she actually can do something, and that Dion is not going to like shame her in front of everyone or make her feel dumb or make her feel like a failure. I really wanted to get those to different sides, and especially for Dion to be someone who makes her feel kind of like she can do anything. With all of her classmates, I wanted to show, it's because I mean, of course, STEM is still very like, dominated by men. I wanted her to go in and be like, oh, there's girls. Like I'm gonna have a girlfriend in here. And for one of the girls to be like, like, I don't want anything to do with you. Not to be like anti-girl, but to be like, that still does exist. There are still girls in these programs and out there in other ways that are gonna not be welcoming. But that maybe the girls you don't expect to be welcoming will be. Because of course, she's not the only girl in class. Her professor was very fun to write because it was kind of like, let's just go in and make this man the worst person on the planet, every single chapter. And that that I mean, it puts pressure on Blair, which is always fun for me, even when it's like, even when she's struggling, even when it's tough. And I also, with Dion, so when I've talked about this, like I was watching a show recently, very recently, like last weekend. And there's a scene with these characters. They're like, I think they're in a writing group. And one of them has given his manuscript to the professor, like previously. And after class, he goes to talk to him about it. And the professor is like, I don't think that you should be writing fiction. Like, I don't think that you should be writing, and basically discourages him, tells him not to do it. And I was like, I was talking to my best friend and I were watching it. And I was like, this would never happen. I was like, I've never had a writing professor who would talk to a student like this, who would discourage a student from trying, who would tell them that they should just quit. Like everything, I feel like every professor I've ever had would encourage you to just keep trying or to try new genres or to try something new. Like they're never going to tell you to just quit. And I told this story at one of my events, and I had someone afterward tell me that one of their professors told them that to stop writing. And she said that she has not written since. And I was like, that is wild to me. And so now I feel like every time I talk about it, I have to be like, guys, don't let one professor, don't let three professors, like, don't let your professors tell you to stop writing, because there are so many, like, think about like a bad book that you've read. Like you're going to have a book that you've DNF'd, you've given it 1 star, you've told all your friends it sucked. You're like, I don't know how it made it onto the New York Times. I think it's the worst thing I've ever read. It's on the New York Times. Like other people loved it. So if you're one professor or two professors or five professors all told you they didn't like your book, trust me, someone out there will like it. So just keep writing. Don't let anyone discourage, don't, especially not some professor. Don't ever let anyone tell you to stop writing. That is my thing. That is wild to me. I couldn't believe that happened in real life.
This is probably my favorite thing about the novel, the wanting things. I
Mhm.
love that Jamie knows what he wants, and I love that
Yes.
he wants Blair to feel that too. So
Mhm.
without any spoilers, can we talk a
Yeah.
little bit more about this interaction?
That's actually one of my favorite parts, is when they kind of talk about, without getting into spoilers, Jamie's just kind of like, is this what you want to do for the rest of your life? Like, sort of forcing her to stop saying, well, this is what my parents said, and like, this is what I've been working toward, and just says, but what do you want? Like, what is it when you picture your life? Like, do you picture yourself in 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, like still doing this? And like, will that make you happy? Because it is something that Jamie himself has had to like go through. Jamie did the same program. He's had not the same type of parental pressure, but a lot of parental pressure in a different way. He's in ROTC, which like is another thing I haven't even talked about. I really wanted to write someone who feels that desperation to go. He wants so badly to go to school. He wants so badly to do this program, to do computer science, to like do all of this for the rest of his life and make this his career. And so he knows what it feels like to really want something, in addition to other things he wants, which, Jamie's he's a yearner. He yearns for so many things. And for Blair, she just sort of has built a roadmap. Maybe not necessarily the roadmap to like where she wants to go. It's just like to go somewhere. She's looking for something that her parents will approve of, something her parents will pay for. That's really important, and something that they both kind of deal with in different ways. Blair knows, well, if I don't do this certain number, like this certain type of major or a major like it, like my parents are never going to pay for me to like do art school. Like they're never going to pay for me to do something they don't see a future in. They will only pay for me to go to college if I do something they approve of. And for Jamie, it's nobody will pay for me to go to college. So I'm going to do ROTC, I guess, and join the army because that's how I'm going to get to go to school. So, it's the two different sides of like that desperation of like, how am I going to get to do what I want? With the money being a big factor, because that is a huge factor. Even when for Blair, someone who has money, whose family has money, in order to do the things she wants to do, she would have to give all of that up. And so I really wanted to get into the two different sides of like wanting things you can't really have and how you plan to get them, and is it feasible? Is it something you can do? Which, spoiler alert, it's always something you can do. It's feasible.
Yes.
There is a
Yes.
way.
I want to do a little rapid fire. Plotter or pantser?
Oh, pantser all the way. Hate plotting.
Paperback or hardback?
I think hardback.
What's a book you want everyone to read?
Trouble is a Friend of Mine by Stephanie Tromley. It's my favorite series of all time.
And
Yeah.
also The Roommate Arrangement by Samantha Markum.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, I would love for everyone to read that.
Should books be judged by their covers?
No, of course not.
In the Samantha Markum literary universe,
Yes.
how do your main characters get along?
Oh, I think the girls would all get along really well. Actually,
Yay!
I think the girls would all get along. Everyone would probably need a break from Junie. I think Win and Doe would get along like a freaking house on fire. It would be three would be talk about under fire. I mean, three would be buried. They would have a blast. And I think Blair would probably be a little bit overwhelmed, but she'd be having a good time. I think the boys would all get along. Yeah. I think that honestly, the hardest would be Wells and three because they're so used to fighting. But yeah, I think they'd all probably get along great.
Oh, I love that. What do you hope readers take away from Blair's story?
Well, I think that quitting is okay. If you're not having a good time, if you don't see a future, if you feel like it is a waste, if you feel like it's hurting you, you can quit and it's totally okay to do that. Everything is survivable. That's the other one. Everything is survivable.
So thank you so much for joining me on the channel once again. I
Thank
really
you.
loved The Roommate Arrangement.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else that you want to talk about? Anything else you'd like to plug?
I don't think so. I mean, I do have another YA coming, but I don't know how much I'm allowed to say. So I have to just stop it at that. I just turned it in. So it's like,
Ooh,
it's
exciting.
it's drafted, it's cooking. It needs a lot of work, but
Yeah.
it'll be coming. Who knows when? I'm not sure when. Probably next year, I hope.
Yeah.
And it is a lot of fun. It's definitely after this book, I definitely was like, we got to do something a little bit more lighthearted this time. We got to keep it. We got to, everybody's got their issues, but we're gonna try to keep it fun. So I'm really excited about it. I think it'll be a good time.
Yay! More Sam books for the rest of us. I'm so happy about that.
Thank
Everybody
you.
else at home, I will leave a link in the description below so that you can get The Roommate Arrangement. Please do so. It's such a great book. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
we'll see you next time. Bye.